It's the market sniper. How, as a cartel of criminals that have captured the world, in fact, as I believe we are in this new world order already of creeping Bolshevik communism, how do you do the following? Have a synchronized debt-based collapse that sees rolling contagion going through each nation state in very short succession, so that all the lepers in the leper colony that kissed the chief leper of debt and usury extraction and followed policies of unsound money to over and indebt your nation, how do you synchronize the ring-a-ring-a rosies, a pocket full of posies? We all fall down, and like children that we played the game, we all hit the deck at roughly the same time across particularly the Western world, but more generally on a worldwide basis. Well, I've been talking recently about the fact that the United Kingdom has pushed itself to the front of the stupid queue in terms of its role, very usefully done by the Fabian Society that runs the Labour Party, but actually runs a lot of things, much like Tavistock and all these other quasi-dark state, permanent governance, Whitehall type institutions that hide behind the rotating gate that you think is your voted in and out permanent government. Of course, you would have seen Liz Truss last 1 month with Kwasi Kwarteng, I think not much more, and the protection that was afforded Bank of England head Bailey, who was responsible for not matching the rates of increase that the Americans did on the UK bonds when inflation was the thing, and for failing to do that and put the British bond market in a very dangerous place, that subsequently the stimulus budget, which would have encouraged entrepreneurship and aspiration in the United Kingdom, actually led to a pound and UK debt-based microcosm mini failure that is a warning of how it will go down on a far bigger level. We warned also when that happened that you would have a similar event in America following, and then we had the Trump tariff tantrum, where both the rates went up, and unlike those that are big dollar maximalists, in fact the dollar crashed and flight capital left the United States, a lot of it American. The predominant holding of that was actually American during the Trump tariff tantrum of April. That led also to a stock market collapse of 27% as well during this period. But going back to the core question being, in a captured globalized game where the forefathers of Epstein and everybody else that runs the pedophilic blackmail cult has captured most governments, if not all, entirely to bring about this, how do they synchronize the fact that they need most nation states to fall down, particularly of the Western axis, simultaneously? And the answer on the firing order is there in the debt markets. Hence why we say to you, it's a debt-based collapse. That's correct. And there's a couple of things in terms of when you understand the end goal, which is a globalized Bolshevik technological communism that is being uploaded, which leads to an extreme chosen one ruling class, an absolute loss of freedoms, serfdom, gulag, rat your mate out, and probably a population cull a la every other genocide that has followed an uploading of communism. Only this time it's going to be focused on the Western nations, and you should, yes, you should be concerned. However many times I say leave the West, people think somehow it won't happen like I am reporting it. This is Cassandra News. This is John the Baptist. I am telling you what goes down when these savages take over. And you are choosing to stay, and every day you choose to stay, you are hardwiring in the fact that you are going to be that island of prosperity. Just had an exchange, by the way, sidebar. Just had an exchange with a guy on Twitter. I've moved to a state which is staunchly freedom orientated. Q, Florida, Texas, whatever. I've gone rural. I've got 5 cows, 3 chickens and all of that. I've done this. I. Be careful about using the word I too often. Well done on thinking you're now going to be an absolute island of prosperity compared to everyone else who is not prepared like you, that the zombies won't come even in the rural areas where you think you're hiding out. Oh, and by the way, that the inversion perversion government won't flip laws that makes it illegal for you to have more than a few chickens. That'll make it illegal for you to have cows if you haven't registered, given them the following shots. They will make your freedom and self-reliance illegal. These are the people that tell you the rain that falls on your roof doesn't belong to you. What they really mean to say is all resources are ours, and in actual fact, under black rock, black stone, that none of you are undermining enough, taking active action to undermine and bring down these corporations, Palantir, BlackRock, Blackstone, are about to tokenize resources as if it's theirs as ownership, where you will pay subscription to utilize nature on the basis that they are the ultimate owners. You are watching all of this coming and creeping up on you, and you are the dog in the fire in the basement saying, this is fine, have another swig of coffee, carry on another day, go watch your Netflix in the evenings. So to those people that think they've sorted their stuff out and they'll see it out in the hills, in the new soon-to-be communist countries, let me tell you, the massive landmass of Russia was absolutely ransacked. Farms across the entire landmass of the old USSR, before it became the USSR, were ransacked. Farmers were slaughtered, their animals were slaughtered, and starvation was brought about. By the way, you have a whole bunch of farms being bought up by attack vector frontmen that you know all the names of, from Zuckerberg, Bezos, Gates, and everybody else. But don't worry, I'm sure they won't throttle supply and help push prices up on the cost of living and create that whiplash inflation that we've warned you about, that goes hand in hand with the fiat debasement that you're also going to experience, with the ongoing collapse of that debt market that we were the first to tell you about in the end of 2020 that is coming. Anyway, back as a global communist Bolshevik organizing the synchronized collapse of the financial system. How do you do it that it happens all together? And here's where all the fake narratives that you'll be hearing get debunked and how they're actually doing it. So let's have a look at this chart over here. The British pound on the, not the pound, the 30-year gilt actually, the yield on the British 30-year gilt. That's in the candle chart to the upside. And I've also more recently, just so that you can see how the UK has accelerated, as bad as America is, and it's the primary hegemon and is going to fall the furthest. Why I say the British, which were actually right down below 5% at this point, and at some point over here we're still well sub 1% on their 30-year borrowing, are now 5.6. 5.6. Let's just summarize that again. 2022, they borrowed for less than 1%. 2022, less than 1. 2025, 5.6% on the long end of the debt. We called that before anyone called that. Zero Hedge can make heroes of Luke Groman, Stanley Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones. You heard that first right here in 2020 in September, that the 40-year debt market had turned. Rates were going to get a lot higher at the time. At their absolute extreme, they were at 0.39 on the US 10-year. Okay, so you heard it first, and I'm telling you what's coming next, and it will be credited to someone else who will say it 3 years after us, as it's busy already half uploading. The same people that said, got plaudits for being the best explainers in the last few months about how gold is being bought and debt is being dumped. No kidding, mate. 5 years in, they are getting their time on Zero Hedge. Let's just listen and go forward. The UK has gone ahead of the US on its borrowing on what is a typical 30-year. I chose 30-year because it's a typical duration, the maximum term typically for a mortgage. We have tied this to the housing market. We have warned that there will be a housing collapse. Only thing that saves it slightly in terms of how much it collapsed is the rate of debasement of fiat simultaneously that is going on, which is why some properties still are not far off all-time highs. But don't worry, rate cut next month. No, friends, no. You can't cut in an environment where nobody wants the asset. You already have liquidity problems on the long end. People can't sell out of their 40-year, their 30-year, their 20-year debt because there's not sufficient buyers. The market is entirely controlled and being held up in the exact same way things like the silver market are being held down. They are lying to you about inflation. Precious metals has hidden the tertiary extractor mercantilist classes. The stats are designed to overstate the strength of the economy in terms of jobs created, understate the true inflation in terms of what you are truly experiencing. No other people that tell you that the inflation's low and that it's actually below Fed's targets. The same guys who tell you about melt-ups and don't describe or explain melt-ups properly in terms of what they truly mean in real terms. And at the same time, your participation and unemployment numbers. All lied to you, all put with a beneficial spin to mask the true extent of this economic downturn that you part the way into, which is yet to have its contagion factor because it's being managed. Hence the question, how do we collapse the debt markets all simultaneously? They're not all, if we take the stopwatch from now, at the same place. So how do you synchronize them up a little bit more? Well, here's the problem. Britain has run to the front of the queue against America. So America, which is one of the worst, is actually in the most recent law since 2013, has seen Britain consistently now in the last year and a half be a worst and higher cost funding mechanism. Bear in mind, Britain doesn't have the Triffin's dilemma of needing to export dollars and run deficits like America has. It is not a privileged hegemon, it's an ex-hegemon. So this is a particular unique incompetence that they've managed to actually take a first world nation into such a high level of destructive state without even being a hegemon. Now here's the problem they have, because I'm going to add another chart on here, and that is the German 30-year. And this is why certain news events are happening the way they're happening. Everybody wants to tell you what a masterclass in America Donald J. Trump is. He's the negotiator. He's the real businessman. We got a businessman on charge and he's squeezing those Europeans. You're going to hear cigar chomping, goat fiddling clowns tell you that you voted right. Okay, and I'm here to tell you that you didn't vote right. He is uploading Palantir biometric surveillance so fast that it makes your head spin while telling you he's fighting for your country. He's really on the team. Stick to the plan. Oh my God, the absolute controlled opposition and BS narratives that are being thrown out by some people that continue to be heard and parlayed non-stop. And they are at peak moment right now. Here's why. They will be at peak moment right now. Here's what's happening that they'll be acclaiming. Watch it. So let's just take stock on this Twitter about the state, and then we'll come back to the Eurozone and its lower interest rates and how that is getting fixed. So you've got Charlie over here, give him a follow, sometimes throws out some interesting stuff. You've got stocks at an all-time high, homes at a near all-time high. That's about a change for sure. Bitcoin at an all-time high, gold at an all-time, money supply, national debt all-time high. CPI is running actually a lot hotter than they're telling you since 2020. Ignore the number. We've already spoken on CPI and PPI, which came out at 10.8 annualized on a 0.9 month-to-month basis recently. And then Fed cutting interest rates next month. That doesn't weigh up at all likely. And don't forget, somebody has to pay more for that debt instrument and accept a lower yield in an environment that financial repression is happening. And everyone but David Hunter understands that inflation is here, stagflation is here, and it's a lot higher than is being reported. He thinks it's well under the Federal Reserve number and a whole bunch lower, and there's no stagflation, and there's largely not much inflation at all, and that it's well below even the Fed's number, which is a peculiarity when you have Walmart slips from 2020 done exactly on the same checkout product for product basis that somehow produce 134% increase, which is about 2.34 times in less than 5 years. You also have the stats that a gold reval would calculate in the last 54 years that gold has outperformed the dollar by 8.4%. Gold typically understood to be the true M2 or the inflation proliferation measure, 8.4%, for which a large amount of that has come actually recently. Don't forget, gold was at 2,000 and shot as high as 3.5 while sitting at 3,350 at the moment. So anybody who tells you inflation or stagflation is not an issue is probably not clear on their economics. So let's go to what I wanted to show you anyway, and that was this tweet. So what everybody will be saying, especially those that like to throw out fake narratives about how awesome Trump is in fixing America after Biden. Meanwhile, the actual immigrants were flooded in on Biden so that he could biometrically bring in the surveillance states in the name of getting them out and registering them and not allowing mail votes and mail order votes anymore. And everyone will have to identify, we're doing this to stop the fraud, remember? And MAGA will go, surveillance, biometric state. Palantir, we love you. That's right. You don't hate them enough. You don't hate Blackstone enough. You don't hate BlackRock enough. You aren't doing enough to undermine, take down, get the breakup of these chronic corporations that brought you under the same Biden regime. All the inversion, perversion, and Gillette adverts, Nike adverts, BLM, transgender flags, and everything else to undermine your culture and society, males in female change rooms, etc., etc. We'll come back to that. Anyway, Ukraine will promise to buy 100 billion of American weapons financed by Europe in a bid to obtain US guarantees for its security after a peace settlement. So the whole talk of this peace settlement is rearm Ukraine, whereby the Eurozone pays for it, prints up new money basically on their debt markets. Ergo, the German debt market, let's just go back here and show you how much lower the rates are for Germany at 3.35 on the exact same duration instrument compared to the 5% that the Americans are looking at and the 5.6% that the United Kingdom. Now, some may say UK will be dragged into some of that funding to a degree. Given where they've put themselves, they will not be contributing particularly much as they roll into the earliest idiots first through the bonfire strategy that the Fabian Society, Tavistock, and all the other Bolshevik communists that want to destroy societies. Remember, they are inherently destroyers, where the solution is communism. That's what happens when you combine corporate fascism with Zionism. Go check the Friends of Israel, by the way, and see what fiddlers they are across the board and what occults, which included the Dolphin apartments in London and everything else, right from Ted Heath and back again. But nonetheless, let's not get into too many reset topics. Quite clearly, Germany has a borrowing advantage still. That is going to be exploited. So what happens as a result of that? Here's what happens as a result of that. The EU now borrows money into existence and starts loading up and playing catch up on unsound money, creating an excess amount of debt. Amazing that they still find placement for that. Of course, it's matched against the tax base of the productive people. There are still productive people out there. We'll also come back to that. So Europe is going to borrow into existence money that's going to be used immediately to buy product from the military industrial complex in America, where Trump will tell you it's the best and it's the superiorest product, so that they can help reduce the excessive trade deficit that America has with Europe. So the beneficiary of the business will actually prop up America to some degree, but only the military industrial complex. So those arms get sent to Ukraine to rebuild an army so that they can have their security, providing, of course, they don't fight, attack, and choose to bomb half their nation that is Russian in the east of Ukraine, which we hope will all stop. So they'll be rearmed, paid for by Europe, provided goods by America, which will actually boost and try to stimulate a bit of the onshoring narrative. America is ready to collapse. It needs to start reducing deficits. It needs to have that. And Europe needs to get borrowed up and become a bigger, scabbier leper. And it's insufficiently leopard out. It's got some lepers to kiss. It's got some scabs to grow so that it can play catch up and go back up to the fives like all the other major NATO nations of the Western world who need synchronization to have a similar degree of debt contagion all the time. But it will be spun to you as brilliant leadership by Donald J. Trump, as all the little European leaders sit in the hallway like naughty students and around his desk, and he holds court in home. That'll all look like Commander Trump winning, and you're going to get all the MAGA QAnon BS, stick to the plan, you voted right, da-da-da-da-da. This is about timing. This is a transfer of money to America for Ukraine to help itself send the goods. America sends the goods to Ukraine. It is absolutely transfer mechanism between various cultist states that need to juggle a certain number of balls and have to keep them all in the air. Why do I say it? Well, if you go back to the tweet that I posted along with this, you'll actually note that I also point out something else happened. Europe seems to be the dumbest patsy in the room. Why? Because they haven't done a big enough job of unsound money yet. Believe you me, they've done an atrocious job, but in terms of the bond markets, they're not quite as bad. So what happened? South Africa is in an absolute debt contagion, can't meet its expenses too, thanks to the ANC Bolshevik communist, of course, you know, Joe Slovo, go see the history. The communists run deep with that lot. And of course, the institutionalized corruption and theft at the political level, which sees many of the people not seeing much of the wealth, given a new, largely black government and a black parliament. The indigenous African population is the most underemployed, and actually many of the infrastructural things are in a worse state than they were then prior. But nonetheless, the EU is there to provide a loan. So if you see what we say here, the beleaguered RSA debt situation is being bailed out by von der Leyen. She was out, she was making the announcement, and she is loaning 4.7 billion euros to South Africa. What is the cause, you may say? The package unveiled on March the 13th, 2025 includes 303 million in EU grants, 4.4 billion in loans from European financial institutions, with the majority allocated to clean energy initiatives such as renewable energy, green hydrogen, and related industries. Now, that is a theft attack vector. It's a chronic intermediation, which will see them spend money, some of which will go back to European nations who went deep on the whole green scam. But it is mainly an intermediation that allows multiple forms of theft, cartelling, the equivalent, the modern day equivalent of brown envelopes, all for what's known to be the climate scam. So this is just a way to put some oil back into a very dry machine that needs to still run a tiny bit longer and re-lubricate some of the moving parts to maintain some form of governance. I'm sure that money will go into some things that are desperately needing it just to keep functioning. But why is it always the EU? You'll note it's not the United States that's doing that borrowing. And of course, you've heard that the BRICS are different and South Africa bad, so it can't be the United States because the narrative would get a bit confused. But the other reason it can't be the United States is because the United States is on its knees already and is trying to fix its own deficits, can't add too much more to the debt when you remember that they are the primary funder of Israel. That's right. They fund Israel, they've been funding NATO, and suddenly they have run out of overdraft, as we've been warning for a very, very long time. So it's time for the EU to be the patsy and hand out money and borrow new money into existence. Why? Because their interest payments to the banker cartel that gives them this exorbitant privilege, by the way, of borrowing your money into existence. It's completely unnecessary. It could be issued by a government. You shouldn't ever be usury owned by anybody just for having a currency. But let's forget that point for a while. The EU is the current best of, and by the way, this also goes straight into the face of the likes that have been telling you for so long that the US is the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry. All those cliches, all those dumb, stupid, totally untrue, absolutely nonsense statements. By virtue of the debt market, it is considered by people that actually do price discovery and positioning on basis of risk and probabilities that the American market is far more dangerous, and the UK even more than the American right now to lend to. Hence why they need a higher return to invest money. They either see the currency falling, the debt instrument falling, and the yield not being sufficient to compensate in the same way. Hence why they feel more comfortable lending to Germany than America. So take your cleanest dirty shirt and look at the flippin' price discovery mechanism of the market and never talk such utter BS to me again. Because I'm sick and tired of copium out of the MAGA brigade. Accept where you are. Man up. The market has spoken. The market says gold. The market says you're high risk. That's a fact. It works. It's trading. Where profits matter, where Americans are choosing, they would rather own a German bond than an American treasury. Okay, for the same duration. Do you get it now? Do you see that pricing? Never say to me again, cleanest, least dirty shirt, healthiest horse in the glue factory. Here's your pricing mechanism. Only the United Kingdom is worse right now, and it's only recently pushed itself to the front of the queue, although it was one of the worst. It's only recently pushed itself to the front of the queue. Okay, so Germany and Eurozone needs to ugly up a bit more. So you're going to find there's going to be a lot of losing negotiations going on. You have to understand that BlackRock, the corporation, the World Economic Forum, some massive quango that started out of Switzerland, Zurich or wherever, all are part of the same attack vector, working in coordination to serfdom you and then potentially to cull the whole flock of sheep right back down to a more manageable size. This has been their objective for an extended period, and they want absolute control over you, which means they strip your assets and your ability to be self-reliant away from you. Hence why people like this guy that I was showing you on Twitter over here, who thinks that having 470 million guns and the Second Amendment is going to be all that you need to be just fine. Just buy yourself some ammo and guns and you can go down in a hail of bullets. Bravo, bravo. By the way, have you seen what drones do recently for a $500 drone? Oh boy. Okay. Did you win during CV19? Did you see how many they took down? This is very, very small-minded thinking. Your entire society fails. It's not about you and how smart you've been in preparing. Here is Europe and some of the things that have gone on. Let's play this video. Actually, it's quite a tell. By the way, the same video goes for the United Kingdom and for America in terms of what's going on. Let's see what this fine individual that looks very qualified is going to say about his host nation, France. He's speaking French. I can, however, confirm that the subtitles are broadly accurate. Let's go.
Non mais les gars, je vais vous expliquer. Moi, je m'appelle ALP, je vis en France, je vis à Paris. Je vis des aides de la France. Les Français travaillent pour moi. Oui, tous les Français bossent. Vous bossez, vous vous levez tous les matins à 6 heures pour aller bosser. Pendant que moi, je dors, je me lève à midi. Et à la fin du mois, j'ai mon RSA. Je touche le RSA de 600 euros tous les mois. Et j'ai 300 euros de la mission locale qui me paye tous les mois. Ça fait 900 euros. Mon loyer coûte 500 euros. J'ai des API de 350 euros. Donc en gros, je paye le loyer à 150 euros. Et à la fin du mois, j'arrive à économiser 600 euros à ne rien faire. Et puis la mission locale me finance mon permis de 1300 euros. Et la mission locale en plus me paye encore mes transports, mes passes Navigo sur Paris, 84 euros tous les mois. L'électricité, c'est les assistances sociales qui payent mon électricité. Qui payent électricité, gaz, l'eau. C'est les assistants sociaux qui payent. Moi, je fais rien. J'ai décidé de ne rien faire. Tous les Français là. Vous avez le seum, oui, prenez le seum. Vous travaillez, vous payez les impôts pour moi, pour qu'on me paye. Et je demande à tous les Français de bosser encore plus. Bossez plus, parce que plus vous bossez, plus vous payez les impôts.
I'm asking you to work harder, pay more taxes. The harder you work, the more I get in grants from welfare, electricity subsidies, rental subsidies, immigrant subsidies, church-based subsidies, you name it, they just keep pouring in for the non-working welfare tourist class. You might say, how's that work out long-term for the debt? It's not very good. It's not very good, especially as it's been flying. Of course, you get the same in the 4-star hotels in the United Kingdom, and you had the same in the US as well. Who did all this, you might ask? You might find yourself asking, who did all this? Well, maybe we should see what this lady said about who did it. Some of you might even know who she is.
I think there's a resurgence of anti-Semitism because at this point in time, Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural. And I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role. But without that leading role and without that transformation, Europe will not survive.
Europe will not survive. I don't know. They were doing fine, I thought. But anyway, that's what's going down. That's what your money's going down. When you pay tax, you are paying to a system orchestrated by people like her who say the things that she said, and I'm taking her at face value. And you see the things that go down in Sweden, in Europe, and everywhere else. In short, these debt prices will go up. And the German ones will go up too. And it is already baked in with a certain degree, and the number will go higher. The number will go higher because if you are actively planning to destroy a country, you've culturally subverted it, you've loaded it up with underqualified people who are welfare tourists, who are not actually escaping a war zone, but they've been invited, they've been shown the law, given all they need, phones, advisors, who to speak to best exploit and ensure they get all the freebies they're entitled to. They navigate and know more about the welfare system in countries than most people who are working, and certainly a lot more than me. In due course, the purple line will worsen. And in actual fact, if we look at the recent, on a shorter term, the more recent progress, you can actually see that it is beginning to catch up. The distance between the two is actually dropping down. Why? Because Europe's going to pay more. And it's part of closing the deficit with America and the Eurozone. This is definitely going on. By the way, it won't go as easily with China, because the Eurozone is kind of captured. Germany never got a peace agreement. Did you know that? Go watch our Professor Werner clip. There never was a peace deal. It's still an occupied country to today. Very, very interesting. Japan at least got a peace agreement, even though their fiscal policies are totally dominated. You have to know who are the slave nations to the Western axis, and you need not to be in them either. Germany, of course, being the Eurozone. So our prediction is the worsening UK market will probably go into a contagion due to the HVF method that we've provided before in previous live streams that we did just couple of days ago. I've also done a bike ride around, which will be coming out today, and this video will probably go tomorrow. This is all about the debt markets, and they don't want you understanding. I say in that bike around, they don't want you understanding bond markets. They're happy with you understanding equity markets. They don't want you understanding the extent of failure. As a reminder, the TLT lost in buying power and capital valuation. Remember, money is borrowed into existence. This is for the USD peeps. In a very short time frame, we spoke regularly to you about escalator up, elevator down, and here you go. Down, 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 and at the low, which you're not far off, you lost 54% in debt. And we said to you, as part and parcel of that, that is how much your fiat has truly devalued just in that period, because money is borrowed into existence and you can't devalue one half without devaluing the other. At the same time, the US dollar has lost relative to other currencies far more generally, not the 54% more, but averaging around 8.5 against the euro, around 12%. I will show you those now. So that tells you the other currencies are probably at the same time. Their debt markets are probably went to the UK, particularly if we're thinking about it, will have lost about 34, 35, maybe even 40% since the highs over there, if we put it up. And their currency is also down, but not down as much as the dollar. The real debt debasement is the truth about your fiat debasement. And if you're average of 10% down on the other nations, that means their debt hadn't gone as far down as yours, and their fiat hasn't gone as yet as far down as yours, which is why the euro is actually firmer than the dollar. But don't worry, they're going to fix that, and they're going to ensure that you get catch up on debt-based destruction on European debt, which will come with a commiserate loss of value in the euro. And everybody will see the dollar and the euro bouncing and not realize that these are all jumpers out of the plane that is called gold, that will get smaller and smaller whilst flying at the same elevation, because fiat currencies are at an accelerated state of debasement along with the debt. You cannot debase the debt without the currency, and as sure as the one follows, the other follows, like 2 feet running in the sand. And you are going to face that, but you don't notice it because of the synchronized effect. So what's happening next is you're going to start to see an acceleration on debt debasement on the European side to catch up with the United Kingdom and America. Hence why they all look so inept at negotiating deals and are handing climate change development money to South Africa, which isn't even a European nation state. Why are you providing oil for the dried up engine of Southern Africa when it's European? Did the Europeans vote for you to put windmills in the Karoo in South Africa? Did they really? I don't think so. But you've got to ugly up, and you've got to keep feeding the corruption pipeline, the intermediation of all these deals, which sees chronic banks make huge fees on lending and deals and signing intermediaries and theft and bungs for so-and-so and so-and-so, etc., etc. So with every announcement of a deal is government officials making largesse, and the dark state behind them that actually told them to do it, because they're not making this up themselves. They're being managed. They're just actors doing what they told. Everybody that you see in your news flow is an actor doing what they have been told by a force that you don't even see, like Lord Levy behind Tony Blair, the brilliant fundraiser. He was such a talented fundraiser. They would goo and plays tennis with Tony Blair. All of these people, like Robert Rubin behind Clinton, like you name it, everyone behind every president, and it's always the same kind of guy that could be deemed in partnership with Spectre, doing some other part of the larger deal that is absolute state capture. You are in an environment of full, complete state capture. Quangos, World Economic Forum's CEOs from BlackRock investment asset management corporations now going across to manage World Economic Forum quangos who are some future direction of absolute Bolshevism. The totalitarianism is coming, friends. It's already here in many ways, and it's coming faster. The next steps are here. This is how they synchronize the collapse. They need to damage any nation that is not yet quite as damaged as the current ones. They're all fighting to get to the front of the queue so they can all fall over together. Ring a rosies, a pocket full of posies, a tissue. We all fall down. And with that, to survive that, I leave you with a thought. There is opportunity in all of this. Better to be a rich slave than a poor one. You too can position to take opportunities. We are short at the moment and have been for a number of days, the UK debt markets. It's triggered a number of setups, by the way, on that very point. Here's the 40-year on a downside. Yes, it's going down in our opinion. It triggered when it hit that green line. And by the way, that was your tariff tantrum, which went with Trump. Not only did it damage American debt, but all the allies got damaged too, and it never fully rallied back to its previous point. This is the value, not the yield, and these valuations are going down. Down. It ended up settling in and around here at around 77, and it triggered a break there. You've already had quite some collapse. You've made the first interim of our target, which is exactly where we expect to rally. So it may go back up, but in the longer term, it goes through here. And if it's the contagion, I think it's not stopping there. It's a much bigger problem. Do they call out the IMF? Last time, when Britain got bailed out the IMF, it took 10% of the resources of the IMF. There simply aren't the resources. I've been given a number by someone qualified to say that to bail out the United Kingdom and plug all its black holes would go beyond 50% of the current resourcing of the IMF. Never mind the fact that the United States is right behind it. Never mind that the people who put the money into the IMF are the same people who are dying of the illness, and the Eurozone is not far behind the United States. This is a debt-based collapse, friends. Your best protection against the debt-based collapse is to recognize the fiat will collapse too. The cost of living is going to go up, and it's all part of the plan. Now I want to talk about something else. So we've spoken about how you organize the initial question, a synchronized collapse. You turn the strongest one into the biggest patsy for negotiations who always ends up paying the bill. Like your rich trust fund pal who's not really that popular, is quiet, sits there and always picks up the tab just so that he gets invited to the party. He's sitting with the most money, he pays the least, it hurts him the least, and everybody leaves and drinks on his account. That's where we are now. And don't believe what brilliant politicians you have working for you who've now organized all of this. Cyril Ramaphosa isn't brilliant and negotiated a clever and brilliant loan for Southern Africa any more than Trump. This is theater. This is money being transferred around to wherever it is needed until they do the all fall down. And it goes cross nations, cross corporations, cross quangos and unofficial foundations. They're all part of a network setting up. And don't worry, UK peeps. When the rates spike and your property prices drop, at the very bottom, rest assured, Blackstone and BlackRock will be there to give the shittiest offer you've ever received on your property, to pick it up when the blood is truly running in the street, so that you can turn into a tenant in your ex-home and you can now live in a BlackRock provided property that you once owned, but now thankfully, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You can be happy and own nothing. That's right. Oh, World Economic Forum, BlackRock, all the same thing. You don't have to overthink it. It's a cartel of corporations and network that are all working against you. The attack vector is in fact you. Part of the communism that we also spoke about, by the way, was the other aspect is tax scavenge. Tax scavenge mode. So let's just have a little look when we talked about tax scavenge mode. So if we talk about tax scavenge mode, what we are actually saying is it's a step in the process of, hey, we don't have the money, things have got real hard, it's tough for us to borrow, government. Guess what? You're the mark. You're paying more. That's what Labour's doing in the UK. They are going into scavenge mode. Everybody's saying, go along to the bone saw cutter nations of, you guessed it, Dubai, Emirates, the fork in the chain, the people that don't really have too much in human rights laws that allowed a bit of torture here and there during the war and ISIS and all of that. You know, those guys, God forbid you ever criticize the government, you might disappear and never be found again. Or be chopped up in some embassy. That's how they roll. And they will give you low tax for a while, but you are a rat being funneled down into the eventual solution. And so you'll run and think you're smart and you'll leave. I'm saying to you, stay away from the attack vectors of the fork in the chain tribe in the Middle East as much as you stay from the West. Yes, you might financially survive a little bit longer, but they have a plan for you. I've no doubt, and you will never be considered indigenous, and you will not have the rights you think you do. It's not a Western nation in terms of law. Anyway, all that said, scavenge mode is where you are at. Trump is going scavenge mode. It's tariffs. It's a tax on his own citizens for buying imported goods. That gives him money and punishes you because you can't find the goods you need in the US to either the standard, the quality, or just to the specification that you want. That is there to get more money in that they are not making from your tax receipts because people are less well off at the moment. So the tariffs is a scavenge mode. What Rachel Reeves is doing in the UK, looking to put a further property stroke wealth tax potentially on properties over £500,000. And by the way, if you live anywhere near London, even apartments are well through £500,000. Doesn't take a lot for properties to be worth over that amount. You will pay a wealth tax. Potentially, they're coming up with a plan to plug all their black holes. They are the greatest manufacturer and miner of black holes. They've made most of them themselves. And you know what? They keep digging, so they're going to keep finding more. They're pretty good. Now they want to find a way to tax black holes. Maybe they can drive them offshore. They've done such a good job of driving everybody else offshore. That's where you're at. That is tax scavenge mode. They know already that they do not have the money. The interest payments on their debts are now at a rate, as we've indicated, and getting higher. For every bit that this line goes down, the interest rate goes up. Let's go and have a look at the interest rate. The inverse relationship on yields. How do you like them apples? That is called an upside HVF. You've just made the first target. You're going to go through 5.866. It's a similar structure to the downside one on the valuation. It's an inverse relationship. It should be. In short, your rates are going to go higher. Your credit cards are going to cost more. Your personal loans are going to cost more. Everything you put on credit, the financial leveraging of your entire system, your car payments are going to go up more. Everybody buys on HP now in the UK and wants a Porsche on finance and a 5% down home loan. If that, by the way, veterans buying in the US on 0 down, still doing it today, and they're cutting their prices at the moment. I know people with developers with real developments in the US that are selling largely to retiree veterans on the basis of what they will get from the state as salaries as veterans. Wait till the rates go higher on the borrowing, and wait till those payouts don't change and don't reflate with the cost of living and the increased rate in the interest rates. They will become forced sellers. They have no equity at all. The prices will drop. The payments will increase on account of rising interest rates, and the government will lag them to real value in terms of any increases and the true inflation rate. In short, you're talking about a lot of tough pensioners, a hard old time for boomers that have had enough booms to should be multimillionaires by now, many times over. If you aren't, you're in trouble as a boomer. By the way, if you're sitting in a property that's at current price value, you could be seeing that property go down in value, your payments go up in cost. This is the stagnation of hyper-stagflation that we've described a lot. Prices going up, cost of living going up at a rapid rate, but somehow the numbers you get out of BLS never quite capture what you're feeling at the till. You've never felt the number bigger, but I feel poorer. It's never felt that way so much. And boy, oh boy, that is hyper stagflation. Stock market remaining at nominal highs, but not adjusted for gold in real terms. Other things very high, but not adjusted. And the safety is gold. The safety is gold, pure gold, link below. Yes, and also ITM trading below. There's a link for gold there. Bullion vault. Buy it on internet, get to a certain amount, convert it into physical. Bullion vault, link below. Gold is, even though it's resting right now and may pause for a bit, still in the long run, it will be winding up for its next move in due course, can still pull sideways and a little bit down, a little bit longer, especially if we were to get a demand destroying event like the debt contagion getting really intense. We might just have a flurry of it with the UK and then a quick little paper over the cracks like Liz Truss, or we might go full contagion. Real potential possible. But in the long run, debt, as it goes up with rates, which actually means the debt is being sold off, actually gold will go up. Not contrary to how everybody thinks that if rates go higher, gold goes down. Initially, maybe in the long run, higher, because this is a substitution of reserve assets out of debt into gold, and that's why the original template of rates higher, gold doesn't pay an interest rate, therefore gold go down. Maybe in a short stab, not in the long run. Substitution. By the way, the other people that were saying, well, it's between Bitcoin and gold. No, it isn't. China's voted, it isn't Bitcoin they're buying. Russia's voted, it isn't Bitcoin it's buying. India's voted, it's gold they hold. It isn't meaningfully Bitcoin. At a state level, at a central banking level. And I don't see the Swiss, which are sort of Europe, but not the EU, stacking up on an obscene amount of Bitcoin, but they are traditional gold holders. So Bitcoin is very much a US NSA type creation that is very much in American hands. And as I've said before, I repeat, the Satoshi wallet, which is the biggest holding of Bitcoin, is more likely to end up in custody by BlackRock on behalf of the people, for a more equitable society and the fight against climate change and the alien invasion. Don't forget, the coming alien invasion. You're going to get a lot more of that BS, by the way. It's just going to coincide. The aliens are going to get interested. The green men are going to be interested in visiting our planet as we get close to a debt collapse. It's kind of like that. You know, they got interested in the planet round about then. It's a coincidence, you see. It's just like a coincidence that 2009 Bitcoin was created, you see, and that the man was worth millions and never collected his prize, never collected anything, wanted pure anonymity and disappeared. How spook-like behavior, I might wonder. Well, I'm just such an awful conspiracy theorist. Anyway, gold is your friend. You stack gold. Silver is your friend, you stack silver, and also I will say platinum. And in the longer run, watch that UK debt. They've pushed themselves to the front of the queue. Watch that Eurozone debt getting more expensive by yield and devaluing as ever more spurious nonsense projects see them spew money in all directions, including non-European countries. Boy, oh boy, they are going to be writing checks and being the dumb money in the room to help ugly up the European continent for the collapse. That's how you synchronize all the Western nations into a collapse, and you propose your technological communism as the new solution, and you get very totalitarian and bully boy-esque about the new laws that come in, and government and state suddenly becomes your worst enemy as all the freedoms you once had get taken away from you now that you're on UBI welfare state. Or you fight it, you click the link below, you become a market sniper community member, where we are building wealth in reset times. We're aiming to protect that wealth in reset times and secure for us freedoms across different geolocations, and to preserve ourselves in these eras that are very, very attack vector orientated towards our kind of self-reliant entrepreneur person, B, against our kind of ethnicity, the massive attack vector that is being brought to us. And in many instances, it's not being an island of prosperity that's going to save you. It's being a community of like-minded on some scale that will give you a fighting chance and odds that you'll survive longer when the totalitarian attack vectors start coming. And more importantly, you will have the option to not be there and somewhere else where you have a residency, and the plans they have for the Western nations will certainly be some of the darkest I've ever seen in history. And let me tell you, there has never been in advance the active attack vectors on a gender, a nation, an ethnicity that never followed some form of genocide. And this level that we've seen being projected, and the attack vectors on the European nationals of all Canada, New Zealand, Australia, America, and Europe, and anywhere else where they live. Never have we seen such a vicious cultural attack across media, across networks, across everything. If you aren't preparing, you will fail. Okay, till next time. Thanks for enjoying our video. We're trying to tie all the dots together and avoid you falling into traps brought to you by other people that are saying, you voted good, stick to the plan, inertia is great, just sit in your rocking chair and watch Netflix, Donald Trump's toiling for you, yeah, have a cigar, no problem, all worries. No, it's coming thick and fast. It's been planned for a long time. You need to do all you can. You need to get scrambling, take action. You were born for these times. You were chosen to see these times through. Go and live it to the fullest. You owe it to yourself to survive and be protection and provide value.
Tired of profit wipeouts and blown accounts from following trade signal groups and other YouTube channels? Looking for a better way to trade, reduce your stress, and minimize your risk? Become a skilled technical analyst and see the charts and markets in a new light using the successfully proven HVF method by Francis Hunt, while being surrounded and supported by a principled, structured, and experienced community. Enjoy a constructive learning environment while practically trading markets, supported by a bespoke platform run through browser and app, specifically designed to teach and engage you whilst learning and growing as the markets move. This is not a Telegram or Slack signal group. All trade ideas are based on a proprietary technical analysis process honed over decades, which is the HVF method, leading to trade ideas with fast-moving breakouts and tight stops, exact entries and exits, nuanced interim considerations, and ultimately, strong rewards. Submissions are graded and scored by Francis for potential high-quality setups, and we provide bespoke tools to help get the job done properly and with precision. Over time and with focused effort, you'll begin to look at charts and price action just like Francis. Community updates every day by Francis and our 3 webinars a week provide a 360-degree approach, which are presented by our experienced team of trade leaders to spot potential trades. We're a community of self-actualized individuals, spanning the globe and active 24/7, 365. The premium community provides a warm, supportive, and cooperative place for people willing to listen, participate, contribute, and to learn. We've changed thousands of traders' lives. Transform your approach to trading now. Transform your life. Book an introductory call with us on the link below.